Hi, and welcome to this edition of Listening Post, brought to you by the Council for Drug-Free Youth. I'm Joy Sweeney, and here with me today, I have Alec Rand. Thank you so much, Alec. Good.
Thank you, Joyce.
Nice to have you here today.
Yeah, it's nice to be here.
I just have a couple of questions for you about your life. I know that right now you're a recovering addict, but can you tell us a little bit about your story and your life before drugs?
Yeah. I don't know. That's always kind of a tough question because, I don't know, it's different for a lot of people. For me, I kind of started pretty young. Before drugs, I don't know, I was an average kid. I went to school, I got decent grades. I played sports. I lived at home with my parents. I was pretty average.
Okay, and you normal family, your parents are together, and
my parents, they never got together. They weren't divorced, but my mom was married to my stepdad, Trevor. So, I kind of had like a fatherly figure in that way.
Okay, all right, and then so any siblings or any other, just you in the family as far as kiddos?
Yeah, I'm an only child.
Okay, and so relatively normal. So how old were you when you started using drugs?
I think the first time that I ever, I had drank before, I had like a sip of alcohol, when I was like 5 or something, but I had never actually drank until I was probably around 10 or 11.
So you were 10 or 11, and you were drinking with your parents' permission, or how did that start?
Well, me and my dad used to drink on like special occasions, like Christmas or something. And I don't know, when I was 10 or 11, I kind of just drank by myself. And then when I was probably 11 or 12, my dad was like, all right, you're getting older, it's not like you're allowed to drink, but it's like you can have like a beer or two, when you're, on special occasions. And that's kind of how I started out.
Okay. All right, so alcohol has really been part of your life since 5th grade, 6th grade?
Yeah.
Okay, so so in your experience, how did that affect you?
Honestly, I didn't really notice it at first. Sometimes I still forget, new things come up that I had never noticed before. And kind of the simple way of when I started to drink, when I actually started to drink heavily, when I turned 13 or 14, my grades plummeted. And I don't mean they went from A's to F's immediately. I went from A honor roll to B honor roll to C's and D's to D's and F's, within a year period. It wasn't immediate, but
within one school year?
Yeah, but within a school year, you could definitely tell that something was going wrong. I developed social anxiety where I couldn't talk to people. And it's not that I couldn't talk to people, it's more or less the fact of I was terrified to talk to people because I was terrified of what people thought of me. And that's like a normal thought for people, but it was more or less I was paranoid.
So you were in middle school when this was all happening?
Yeah.
Okay. And so the substance at this point in time in middle school, the only substance you're doing is drinking?
Yes.
Okay. And so that's illegal. So I guess your dad thought it was no big deal that you were drinking, even though that you were 12 or 13.
Yes. He had no idea I was drinking, going to school. But yes, he would, let me have a beer or two when I was at home, and that's illegal. So you were
drinking at 12 or 13 and 10 and 11, all those ages that you've mentioned so far, is illegal. You're not even 21 now, are you?
No.
So even right now, for you to have any drink, it's illegal?
Yes.
Okay, and your dad knew this?
Yes.
And he still thought it was okay?
Yes.
So what substances have affected your life the most? Is it alcohol?
Probably marijuana.
Oh, so even though you started drinking and you were drinking before you went to school?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about what that was like?
I couldn't stand being in school because when I started to drink heavily, social anxiety, my grades plummeted, but I also learned to hate myself. Like, you know, my low self-worth, I had no self-esteem. You know, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I was disgusted with the person who I was. And to be okay with that, I would drink before I would go to school so that I wouldn't care what people would think about me. I wouldn't care what happened. I just didn't care about myself. I didn't care about my grades. I didn't care about, you know, any relationships with friends, you know, with my family. I had just lost the want to care.
So basically drinking was your self-medicating or coping
Yes.
mechanism. Okay, and so drinking affected you, and that was in middle school. So in middle school, you didn't do any other substances, or is that when you started using marijuana?
No, I didn't. In middle school, I did not use any other substances besides alcohol.
So then, okay, so then you said that marijuana was also another substance that affected you. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think the first time that I had ever had marijuana, I was 14. It was Christmas Eve, and I had tried marijuana for the first time, and I immediately fell in love. I thought it was, you know, the best thing ever.
Christmas Eve, so where were you?
I was at home. My dad was asleep on the couch, and my dad's roommate upstairs smokes marijuana. And I went up there, and we had been drinking all night, and he let me hit his pipe, and I immediately fell in love.
Okay, so what kind of behaviors did you observe in relationship to your substance use?
I mean, yeah, honestly, just more social anxiety, the fact that I couldn't look at myself. But then when I started to use marijuana, my relationships with my family, like, were gone like that. And that had happened with alcohol, but not like this, where I couldn't talk to my parents without, I don't know, without seeing red. I couldn't go out. I was terrified of everything. I mean, honestly, smoking marijuana was the only way I could cope with any of my problems because of how insecure I was.
So you transitioned basically from coping with life through drinking alcohol to coping with life through smoking pot, or you were doing both?
I was doing both.
Okay, so in what fashion?
Honestly, any way I could get my hands on it.
Okay, because you're now a 14-year-old
Yeah.
kiddo, so you're a freshman in high school?
I was in 8th grade.
You're still in 8th grade, and you're smoking pot and drinking alcohol every day, or?
Not every day, but I mean, yeah, basically every other day. Yeah, as much as I could get my hands on it, at home, at school, any way I could get my hands on it.
So at this point in time, so walk us through a day in your life, or a week in your life, or the time period that you know, it was tragic for you.
When I was 14 and I was finishing 8th grade, going on to 9th grade, I would get, my mom would give me money to go out to lunch, because in 9th grade was the first year of high school and we were allowed to leave to go get lunch. And she would give me money to go, you know, Taco Bell, McDonald's. And I would, you know, I'd say like, hey, can I have $10 to go get some food today? She would give me $10 and I would immediately go to school and buy marijuana. Or I would give it to someone at a gas station and have them buy me alcohol. Or I'd steal it if I had to.
So you stole, what, alcohol from the convenience stores or stuff
Yes.
like that? Okay. And so can you describe like the cause and effect of your experience maybe a little bit? So, I mean, so what happened? Yeah, tell us a little bit about the cause and effect.
Well, I think the most dramatic cause or the effect of me, you know, stealing, drinking, smoking, especially on school grounds, I was arrested 13 times in 6 months. At school? At school. And at home.
Okay, 13 times. So, okay, you got arrested, then what happened?
I mean, I was arrested the first time for possession of marijuana in 8th grade. The second time was my sophomore year. I was arrested for minor in possession. I was arrested again a month later for minor possession. I was arrested again for possession. At this point, I was like, you know, the Board of Education was like, you know, either you stop or, you know, we're going to have to expel you. And I didn't care. I didn't care. And I did it again. And at one point, from me being suspended from school, from being arrested, I had drank. And I think this is the biggest part of why, is I had drank, it was February 15th, 2013. I'll never forget this day. I had been at home drinking by myself. My mom was at work. It was probably 1 in the afternoon. I was watching TV and I heard the garage door open. And I was freaking out because I knew, like, oh no, like my parents are home, you know, for lunch. And they're gonna be able to smell alcohol in my breath, they're gonna know. And at this point, my parents had drug test me every week, threatened hair follicle tests, you know, army camp, or military camp, military school. I had been put through rehab once. None of it, it didn't faze me.
None of it mattered to you?
None of it mattered.
Okay. Well, you know what, we probably need to take a little short break. But I want to hear more about that day on February 15th, 2013, about what actually transpired that day, because you say that day is stuck in your memory. So I want to hear a little bit more about that. So maybe after the break you can tell us a little bit about that. Okay, would that be all right?
Yes.
All right. Thanks again, Alec. I appreciate your time.
Thank you,
We'll be right
Joyce.
back.
Laura says we should start worrying about drinking at these things.
You're only 12.
I know. I'm just glad you know better, sweetheart.
You're too smart for that, right, honey?
Real kids are curious about alcohol. 40% tried by the 8th grade. Talk early, talk often, get others involved.
2 o'clock. Okay.
Your employees who serve in the National Guard and Reserve may seem different. They may work a little harder, be more confident, more willing to make the extra effort to get the job done right. So when your employees need time off to serve, remember, it's not just good for our country, it's good for your business.
Glad you could all make it.
And we're back with Alec Rand, the recovering addict, talking to him about his tragic story and the day that he will never forget, February 15th, 2013. Alec, do you want to tell us a little bit about that day?
Yeah. As I was saying, I'd heard the garage door open at around 1 p.m. And I was freaking out because I knew that my parents were home, and I knew that they would know that I was intoxicated. And I freaked out, and I hid all the bottles, put them in the back of my mini fridge, and tried to fake that I was asleep. And I heard a knock on my door. It was my mom, and my mom came home. She came home every day for lunch. And I tried to fake that I was asleep, and she came in, and she immediately knew. She could smell it in the air. She didn't have to smell my breath. She walked in and she's like, Alec, I can smell it. She's like, how much have you been drinking today? And at that point I knew I was caught, even though I still tried to, fake that I was asleep. For some reason that would work. And I got up, and I was, at this point I had been prescribed antidepressants, and I also took ADHD medication, Ritalin, and you are not supposed to drink with antidepressants because it makes you violently angry. And I was already just an angry person. Like I said earlier, anytime I would just talk to my parents, I would see red. And I got out of my bed, and we started yelling at each other and screaming at each other. And then I don't know what happened next. I just remember, I don't even really remember most of it. Most of it was told to me by the sheriff's department. But I had swung my mother and grabbed her by the throat, threw her up against the wall, screamed in her face, threatened to throw her down the stairs, stole her phone so that she couldn't call the police, and ran away. And when I say run away, I mean I ran outside to check her phone in the lake. And she had run to her room crying, locked herself in her room. And at this point, she had taken my phone from me, several months before this. I wasn't allowed to have a phone. And she had still had the phone activated. So she used my phone. She called 911. And the Highway Patrol and Sheriff's Department came out to my house. And I was arrested for aggravated assault against my mother and minor intoxication.
So then, you were arrested and put in prison, I assume, or what happened?
No. At this point, I was on juvenile probation, and I had an immediate appointment with my juvenile officer, and I was scheduled for a court date to see how long I would be put in jail.
Okay. And how old were you at this time?
I was 15 years old.
You're 15 years old, and you've been arrested 13 or more times, 13 times within the last 6 months, and now you're about to be arrested again, and then you had a court date to see how long you would be put in jail. So
And
what was the outcome of that?
And I was also expelled from school.
And you would all just been expelled from school after this incident, or that's why you were home?
Yeah, 2 days after that incident, I was expelled from school.
Okay. All right. So then you go to this hearing, and what did they decide?
Well, actually, the hearing was scheduled. I had a hearing with the Board of Education, the Columbia Board of Education, and I was expelled from my high school for the rest of my life. I was never allowed to go back. And my court date was rescheduled for like April 2nd. So it was like a month and a half away.
And were you free to walk the streets during that time?
No, I was locked in my house. I wasn't allowed to leave. I was constantly supervised by either my stepdad, his dad, or I was sent to my grandparents' house on the Lake of the Ozarks to be supervised. I wasn't allowed to leave. I wasn't allowed out of my adult supervision.
And you didn't have a phone?
And I didn't have a phone. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a license, permit. I didn't have anything.
Because you're 15 years old.
Yeah.
So then what happened on April 2nd when you went to court?
Well, March 29th,
Okay.
2013, I was taken to, I had been drinking that night on March 28th, and I was, at this point, I just drank in my room by myself because I wasn't allowed to leave the house. I wasn't allowed to go to school, and I stole a bottle of my mom's wine. And I was drinking in the room by myself, and I probably went to bed at 5 or 6 in the morning after drinking a bottle or two of wine. And I woke up, and I think it was Easter, or it wasn't Easter, but it's when we celebrated Easter with my step-parents, or my stepdad's parents. And we went to Easter, and even then, I had 4 cousins on that side, and we always get $10 gold coins. And I wasn't going to tell my parents that I got $10 because I wasn't allowed to have money either. And then I had stolen all of my cousins' $10 coin or $1 coins. So I had $50 coins, and I had planned to use that to go and buy more. And then later on that day, this was March 29th, I was taken to, I was told that I had a therapist appointment, and I had had a counselor all my life, so I didn't think it was that big of a deal. But I was taken to a counseling office for a rehabilitation group, an enthusiastic sobriety group, out in Columbia, Missouri. And I probably talked to them for, 3 or 4 hours. I was still heavily intoxicated at this point, too.
Okay. So you're in there in this enthusiastic sobriety group, and you're totally wasted?
Yeah.
Okay.
With my appointment, and I talked to a man named David Roberts, who was my counselor, and I met with the junior counselor, Derek Landis, and I had an appointment there at Crossroads, and you know, they were like, you know, if you're willing to give this a shot. And at this point, I had been through, you know, rehabs. I'd done it all, you know. And I just wasn't, I didn't want to get sober. I didn't care. You know, I planned for the rest of my life to get high. And at this point, you know, I just didn't care, you know, and they're like, well, you know, if you're willing, you know, give this a shot, you know, you can at least come around for tonight. Because we had functions. It was a Saturday night, and we had functions on Saturday. And we had a volleyball function. They had a volleyball function, and they took me to it. My mom took me to it. And it blew my mind because, you know, I had accepted their terms, you know, like you can't, you know, bring any drugs. You can't, you know, be using drugs. Like, yeah, we know you're kind of intoxicated right now, you know, but it's like you can't bring anything to there, but you can still come. And I was blown away. Immediately, my mom drove me down there with a smile on her face. She was happy, you know, that I accepted these terms, you know, only a month after what had happened. And then she handed me $20. And, you know, she told me, she smiled on her face, got out of the car, gave me a hug, and told me to go have fun. And I went and I played volleyball, and there's, you know, it's a group of, you know, 13 to 25-year-old group of kids who were all recovering alcoholics and addicts, ranging from alcohol to heroin. And, which sounds scary.
Yeah.
It's scary, but it's probably the best experience of my life.
Wow. So you went from this tragic moment, 1 month, 30, 45 days prior, to this wonderful highlighting moment of your life at age 15. Mm-hmm. So,
and March 29th was my first day, or first night. I guess technically March 30th was my first day sober.
okay.
And I've been sober ever since.
And you didn't relapse, or
I've never relapsed.
that experience was just such a positive, life-changing experience that you decided forever to stay sober from that?
Well, we have a saying, and it kind of explains it, is my worst day here, my worst day sober is still better than my best day getting high.
Because?
Because I don't hate myself anymore.
There you go. Okay. Well, that's pretty telling. You know, and I could probably listen. I'm sure you've got many, many more stories, but it's just very rewarding to see that recovery has been such a positive experience for you. I know for many it can be difficult. But can you tell us anything about the best practices or long-term recovery? How do you plan to stay sober for the rest of your life?
Yeah. And to answer your question earlier that I kind of was leading up to it is, my court date was April 2nd.
Yes.
I had 4 days sober when I went to it, and because the court saw that I was sober and I was in a rehab, and my counselor had came to speak for me, they had just given me, I was looking at 6 months in jail at age 15, and, you know, a couple hundred hours community service, and they let me off with 2 years of juvenile probation, which I got off in 6 months.
For good
Because
behavior.
I had obtained 6.5 months sober, and they could tell that I was different.
And you changed your attitude about everything, and you were headed in the rightful path. So what can you tell us about how you plan to stay sober, how you plan to stay recovered?
Well, I go to meetings every Tuesday and Thursday, and functions every Friday and Saturday. I also, not that this is, you know, mandatory, but I love going to, you know, AA meetings every once in a while, NA meetings. And I know this sounds crazy, you know, but
Nothing's crazy.
I pray morning and night. And for those, you know, who are agnostic or atheist, you know, it's not that you have to pray to some certain conception of God. You can choose your own conception of God. You know, this chair could be my higher power. You know, it's just finding a power greater than myself. I pray morning and night. You know, I surrender my will, you know, because anytime that I like listen to my own thinking and my own solutions, you know, like I think this will be good for me, it tends to not be. Tends to be the thing that's normally the worst for me because I just try to sabotage. Because I love being miserable. I do.
But you've learned that that's not healthy.
Yeah, I love being miserable, but I know that I can't be, or I'll die.
So recovery, it's difficult and it's different, but what do you hope to accomplish in your life?
Well, right now I'm in school. I graduated high school. I was expelled as a sophomore. I graduated on time in 2015 with my high school diploma. I am in school right now as a freshman in college for acting and business management. I am, you know, I do a lot of community stuff. Like I said, I'm in school. I have a job at a car wash that I love. It's awesome. I love cars. You know, and like, there's you know, there's nothing to complain about.
So keeping active and staying happy and staying involved in other things and staying around a group of friends that help you
Yes.
stay sober has helped you be healthy and happy in recovery?
Absolutely. You know, if you want to be a movie star, you hang out with movie stars. If you want to get high, you hang out with people that get high. If you want to be sober, you hang out with people that want to be sober.
And that's what you've chosen?
And that's what I've chosen because I know that that's not only is it the right thing to do, but it's like it's what I want to do.
It's what you want to do now. Well, that's great. Congratulations. I'm very, very proud of you, and I appreciate you coming here. It takes a lot of courage to share your story like that. And we are all out of time. I probably could talk to you again, like I said, for at least another hour or two. But thank you again, Alec. I appreciate it. And you've been listening to The Listening Post, brought to you by the Council for Drug Free Youth. Thank you.